For today's episode, I thought that we might try something a bit different. I write the scripts for all of the episodes on this channel, but not today. Today's episode is at least in part written by a special guest, the AI system ChatGPT. So how did it do, and what should we make of it? And what does all this mean, if anything, for the future of software development? Oh, and while we're at it, let's answer one more pressing question. What is Dr. Seuss's take on test-driven development? Hi, I'm Dave Farley of Continuous Delivery. Welcome to my channel. If you haven't been here before, please do hit subscribe, and if you enjoy the content today, hit like as well. In this episode, I asked ChatGPT to write a script. I asked it, write a script for a YouTube video for the Continuous Delivery channel on the subject of test-driven development in the style of Dave Farley. Now, I'm pretty sure that ChatGPT doesn't have a clue who I am, and doesn't know anything about the Continuous Delivery channel on YouTube either. But before I try out the episode that it wrote, let me first thank our sponsors. We're fortunate to be sponsored by Equal Experts, Tricentis, Transfic, Launch Darkly and Roost. All of these companies offer products and services that are well aligned with the topics that we discuss on this channel every week. So if you're looking for excellence in continuous delivery and software engineering, do click on the links in the description below to check them all out. So here is the episode that the AI wrote. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Continuous Delivery channel. Today we're talking about TDD, or test-driven development, and how it can help improve the quality of your software. First, let's define what TDD is. It's a software development process where you write automated tests before you write the code that will make these tests pass. This approach encourages you to think about the desired behavior of your code before you start writing it, which can lead to better design and fewer bugs. One of the key benefits of TDD is that it helps you to catch bugs early in the development process. By writing tests before you write the code, you're effectively creating a safety net that will catch any issues as soon as they arise. This can save you a lot of time and frustration down the road, as bugs are much harder to fix once they've been introduced into the code base. Another benefit of TDD is that it helps you to design more modular and maintainable code. By thinking about the desired behavior of your code before you write it, you're more likely to create code that's easy to understand and easy to change. This can make it easier to add new features or fix bugs in the future, which is especially important for large and complex code bases. Now, TDD is not without its challenges, and it may take some time to get used to it. But one of the biggest challenges is that it can add to the development time, as you need to write tests before you can write the actual code. But this time investment will pay off in the long run, as it will make your development process more efficient and your code more robust. In conclusion, TDD is a powerful software development process that can help you create high-quality software that is easy to maintain and understand. If you're not already using TDD, I encourage you to give it a try and see for yourself the benefits it can bring to your development process. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the Continuous Delivery channel for more great content. The first thing to say is that that's not at all bad, really. It made several important points about TDD that, if I'm honest, I expected it to miss. In particular, the impact on modularity and the maintainability of the code. I hope that something I wrote would have a bit more to it than this, if I'm honest. This sounds a bit more like someone's homework rather than a real description that's intended to encourage people to try it. If our machine overlords want us to do TDD, they'll probably need to try a little bit harder than that. But nevertheless, it's surprisingly good. If you are new to the ideas of TDD and want to learn more, I have a free training course on the topic which acts as a great introduction. There's a link in the description below. Now, I'm not so egotistical that I expect GPT to have heard of me or my YouTube channel. In fact, after I asked it to write the script, I asked it who I was and got this response. So I gave it some clarification, and after that, even a few days later, for me at least, it still knew who I was. One of the interesting things about interacting with ChatGPT is that responses to the same question change I asked it a second time to create a script and got this one instead. Completely different to the first in style as well as in content. This one has kind of stage directions as well as the dialogue. I also asked it to write the same script in the style of someone else. In this case, a name I made up with presumably little connection to test-driven development. It produced this, which is essentially the same script that I got the first time. Now, there's a lot of stuff going on here, and I assume that what lots of you are really interested in is less about YouTube scripts and more about AI's ability to write code, and we will get there. This is an oversimplification, but the way that ChatGPT and similar language models work is to predict what word should come next. They do this based on training with vast amounts of data. In fact, a recently published paper predicts that the pace of AI development may start slowing down by 2026 because AIs like ChatGPT are trained on the content of the internet, and they will soon learn all of that. And we humans aren't producing new data fast enough to keep up with the rate at which these AIs consume it during training. Technically, ChatGPT is a large language model chatbot developed by OpenAI based on GPT 3.5. GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer, and the pre-trained bit is important here. It means that the system has already learned. It's not really learning as you interact with it. When it changes its responses, as it did when I asked it twice to generate a script, that's really a kind of smoke and mirrors built in to add the illusion of cleverness by the AI. It's remembering some of the history of previous conversations that I had with it, as in when I asked it who I was, and at first it didn't know and later it did. If you ask who is Dave Farley, it won't know, even though with my login it now does. This has interesting implications because now the answers to questions depend on who's asking them. This isn't completely alien to us because often people are a bit like that too. But the problem here is, how do we gain confidence or not in any particular answer? With humans, we rely a little bit on their reputation, perhaps how well we know them, maybe the strength of the argument, too often how much the idea reinforces our own opinions, and so on. If we're skeptical, we may question the person a little bit further to try and get a better sense of what it is that they really mean and why we should believe what they're saying. But will we do that with an AI? It seems to me that the problem here is really quite profound. Large language models are amazing statistical models for predicting the next word. They are astonishingly good at simulating conversations, and in many ways they're already superhuman in terms of the scope of the information that they were trained on and presumably have at their conversational disposal. For example, for most practical purposes, they've already solved the translation problem between languages. We'd be impressed with a human being who could speak maybe 10 languages fluently. ChatGPT was trained in '97. And can speak all of them fluently. That doesn't include programming languages, by the way. And yet, ChatGPT doesn't know and doesn't care about the difference between truth and untruth. It has been programmed and is better than its predecessor, InstructGPT, at pointing out explicitly wrong questions. But this isn't really based on a fundamental sense of truth or untruth. It's something else, something less dependable. This is quite a deep flaw because although ChatGPT isn't trying to mislead us, for it, there is no difference between a right answer and a wrong answer. Only whether or not it seems statistically probable in terms of the generality of language that this word should follow the last one, in the context of the question that was being asked and the history of the conversation with you specifically. None of this says anything about truth or accuracy. Last month, Stack Overflow banned the use of answers from ChatGPT because, as they said, they were factually ambiguous. ChatGPT doesn't have any sense of that wrongness, but states its answers with seemingly equal certainty and conviction. A journalist asked it this question, and it responded with Guatemala, when the real answer is Nicaragua. But you don't have to be that clever to get wrong answers from it. I asked it to multiply 357 by 37, and it said 13,169. It didn't say, I'm no good at sums, but it might be 13,169. It didn't hesitate and look a bit embarrassed and say 13,169. It just stated this as the right answer, except that it isn't the right answer. 357 times 37 is 13,209. This is a bit like some kind of superhuman Dunning-Kruger effect. It gives answers with the illusion of complete confidence in them. The danger is that we assume them to be correct, while ChatGPT doesn't have any understanding of what correct even means. I confess, this makes me nervous, because the output from ChatGPT is astoundingly good and sometimes convincing, and completely untrustworthy all at the same time. It even says this if you bother to ask it. So what does all this mean for coding with AI in general and ChatGPT in particular? Well, our jobs aren't at risk just yet, that's for sure. It can do things like this, and significantly more complex things too. But as the examples on Stack Overflow showed, not reliably, in a way that you can trust the results. I asked it, how good is the code that you write? And it answered, as a language model, I don't have the ability to write code. In my next question, I asked it to write some code, a simple function, and it did. Do you think it's feeling confused or conflicted by now? No, neither do I. I confess I started on this exploration without a firm idea of where I would end up. But as I started playing with different scenarios in ChatGPT, my conclusion became clearer. Although somewhat ironic given where I started this episode by asking for a script on TDD. If I was going to use ChatGPT for coding, I'd use it in two ways. A kind of smart reference book to help me find or remember how to do something, but that something would be pretty narrowly scoped or focused. Or, and here's the ironic part, I'd use test-driven development. I don't trust what it tells me, so I want to check it. So how would ChatGPT get on with test-driven development? Well, I tried it. I asked it the same question twice in a row. To be honest, I didn't mean to ask it twice, but I'm pleased that I did. The first time I forgot to record my screen, which is why I asked it again. But the first time I got a reasonable answer. It was wrong, as it turned out, but it was wrong in a way that I can sympathise with. I could easily have made the same mistake, but I still would have done a better job in the end. Here's my test and the code that ChatGPT wrote to solve the problem. I was very impressed by this. This is a solution to the problem that I posed with the test. Next, I took the code and pasted it into my IDE and ran the test, and it failed. I imagine me doing exactly this. I wrote a test and made a mistake. I confess that I was being a bit lazy when I wrote the question to ChatGPT. I'd asked ChatGPT to write a version of this sorting code before I tried asking it to do TDD. So I already had some output from the earlier run of the code. Anyone who knows anything about test-driven development knows that this is a bad idea, a bad way to get your test data. Now, my test is driven by an earlier version of the solution, which may have been wrong, but was certainly based on some not necessarily accurate assumptions. In this case, I wasn't being clear about how to order words of the same length. And I didn't know, or at least I didn't think about, whether or not Python preserves order when I call sort. Run this test twice and clearly sort doesn't preserve order because you'll get different results each time, so the test fails. ChatGPT doesn't know this and so authoritatively asserts that this code passes my test. But it doesn't, at least most of the time. I assume that if I run it often enough, by chance it will one day pass, but that's not really a passing test at all, is it? As a fallible human, if I made the same mistake, I'd go, "Doh!" and decide what order I actually wanted my results in. And I'd change this test, or maybe, more likely, I'd add some other tests to better define that part of the problem. I'd iterate and learn from the exploration of my problem. But remember, ChatGPT doesn't learn. And currently, none of the other language models learn in this way either. This is an interesting and completely understandable mistake for ChatGPT to make. But, as I said, I forgot to screen grab it, so I did it again. But this time, it made a very different kind of mistake, even though given exactly the same input. I just copied and pasted it. This second version of the code is not solving the problem posed by the test at all. It's doing something completely different, and this test will never pass. But once again, ChatGPT confidently asserts that it already does. For snippets of code this small and simple, it's relatively easy for us to verify them. But this isn't how people are talking about using it. There are lots of articles and YouTube videos proclaiming that ChatGPT can code better than some programmers. It passes leak code tests and so on. But I think that this is deeply missing the point of what software development really is and what it takes to do it well. Software development is not about writing code or optimizing for typing. Sure, I can get ChatGPT to generate a skeleton of a website, and there are some remarkable examples, one on the OpenAI homepage, of ChatGPT helping to debug some code. But software development is about solving problems. We use software as a tool to capture our solutions. If we're optimizing to reduce typing, we're optimizing for the wrong thing. Do I think that AI will one day write all the code? Yes, I do. Do I think that we're close to that day? My honest response to that is I don't have a faintest idea. But I think that the current form of machine learning that underpins ChatGPT and all the other language models isn't all that it will take to replace a programmer, or humans in other disciplines and fields too. Without some form of understanding of correct or not, true or not, it feels as though we are both closer to that day with advances like ChatGPT and still a very long way from it. I think that there are several things that will be necessary to replace humans in programming and other fields. I think that this will require something a lot closer to genuine first-class artificial general intelligence, rather than a conversational simulator, no matter how amazingly convincing it may be at conversation. I think that real-world software development is all about learning, and a canned, pre-trained algorithm isn't learning at all until it's dealing with inputs and changing its responses based on them. For that, we're going to need some AI version of neuroplasticity, which some groups are working on. In terms of programming, this means that even an AI needs to approach problems and iterate on them. In my example, going back and thinking of new tests once it learns that this one doesn't work. And finally, ironically, it needs to work experimentally, trying ideas out. And again, in terms of coding, it needs some form of test-driven development to validate its guesses, just like a person would. Oh, and one more thing, before I go, just for fun. Here's ChatGPT's version of a YouTube script on test-driven development in the style of Dr. Seuss. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoy my stuff, please consider supporting our work on this channel by joining our Patreon community. Thank you and bye-bye.